Hey everybody, how you doing? It's Ben from TAFE. Hope you're well. It's late here. It's about 4:30 on a Friday afternoon here at TAFE, which means it's a bit quiet, which means it's the perfect time to film this introduction to a video I got to shoot months ago at EduTech. It's one of the keynote speeches by a character called Dr. John Collick. He's a very, very clever dude. He is the education guru, expert, Yoda, sensei kind of character that is employed by Promethean, the company that make our incredible panel, whiteboard, TV, touch device, computer, time transportation machine. And his speech is, as you can tell, it's pretty late on a Friday, I'm getting tired. His speech was all about poking a bit of fun at how we as teachers and educators kind of try and play games with our students, but not really. We just try and get them to do some work and tie a balloon on the end of it. So it's quite a funny presentation, but he also does have quite a lot of smart points in there with lots of sciencey evidence that prove why it's important to start with the fun and then let the learning kind of happen, and why you should have faith that if it's fun, the learning will happen. I got to have way too many chats with Dr. John at EduTech. I just any minute he was alone, sitting quietly, I was just over there to pick his brains. And there's a lot of brains to pick. So he saw this video, I filmed it, sent it to him. He's cool with it. He said share it to whoever might benefit from it. I really dig this presentation. Hopefully you will too. Check it out, and please, if you like it, let me know. If you don't, let me know. I just really want to get a comment on a YouTube video one day.
But let's move on, ladies and gentlemen. Our last speaker before we break for morning tea. If you could please make very welcome Senior Education Consultant for Promethean, Dr. John Collick.
Hi, good morning. I apologise for standing between you and tea. I'll try and cane through this in 20 minutes. I want to talk about games and gaming, and basically why are games so compelling, how games can be used in education, different modalities of games also. The one thing I want to emphasise at the beginning is I'm not just talking about computer games. I realise this is EduTech and we tend to assume that when we're thinking about games in education, we're talking about computer games. Everything I talk about here also fits to actual physical games, board games, card-based games, etc. Can I just do a quick check? Hands up if you're a gamer. Okay, cool, excellent. Right, I'm going to run through the names of some games. I'd like you to put your hand up if you've played them. Skyrim. Hey, okay. Civilization. Okay, good. Grand Theft Auto. Okay, good. All right. Candy Crush Saga. I won't judge. Good. Brilliant. Oh yeah, no, also check. Board games. Settlers of Catan. Agricola. Okay. Monopoly. Yeah, we've all played Monopoly. Fabulous. Gaming is it's a massive world. It's a massive world. If you want to use games, if you want to use games in education, you've really got to kind of absorb yourself into that world. If you know more than 5 of those terms, which are all taken from the gaming world, you're doing pretty well. It can seem quite daunting, it can seem quite huge, but there are lots of interesting ways of using games for learning. Pokemon. Remember Pokemon? Yeah, anybody used to play Pokemon? Used to play Pokemon. Fabulous. My kids love Pokemon. 506 Pokemon, each with individual unique powers and the ability to evolve into new forms. So that's all your Pokemon, about 506. That's the periodic table of elements. Yeah, now there are 119, I think, last count, 120 if you include the ridiculous element out of the film Avatar, lazy plot devicium. Now, here's a statement. Gallium is a post-transition metal that melts at 30 degrees. Fair enough, cool. Here's another statement. Ponyta is a fire Pokemon that evolves into Rapidash. Now, as far as the brain's concerned, there is no difference in terms of structure between that statement and that statement. And yet, you know, how many kids know that? How many kids knew that? That's really cool. Ponytail's a fire Pokemon that evolves into Rapidash. And we can use it to fight against Squirtle and Jigglypuff. But it'll struggle against Bulbasaur. They knew this stuff. They absorbed into it. There's something about it that they memorized 506 Pokemon. How many kids have memorized any of the periodic table of elements? So we're clearly missing a trick here. Gaming is fundamental. Do you recognise the guy on the right, yeah? Freud? Sigmund Freud. The creature on the left is my cat. That's what I see when I go down at 6 o'clock in the morning to put the coffee on. Now, this stupid animal, I noticed doing something very strange. He had a ball and he was knocking it under the sofa and then he was pulling it out again. And then the idiot was knocking it straight back under the sofa again. And I'm thinking, why are you doing this? You know, it's ridiculous. You're doing the same thing again and again and again. And then I remembered Freud, in Beyond the Pleasure Principle, described watching his grandnephew play a game where he'd throw a ball and go 4, and then grab the ball back and go down. And he was repeating this again and again and again. And Freud claimed that this was the basis of what he called the pleasure principle. What gives us pleasure is losing something and getting it back again. So I was seeing the cat doing exactly the same thing. And this kind of shows us that higher order mammals learn through play. It's fundamentally wired into our heads. We learn by playing. And yet we live in a world where school, traditionally, is where you study, serious, and you play outside. So we've kind of gone against the grain of how our brains actually work. And there's some interesting recent discoveries in neuroscience that give a clue as to why games are so kind of compelling. We've discovered, for example, that failure boosts cognition. If you do something and succeed, then the level of serotonin in your head will increase. Serotonin is like the oil that makes your car engine work better. It improves cognition, serotonin. If you do something and fail, your serotonin levels go up even higher. If you watch somebody else do something and fail, your serotonin level goes up. Failure's good. Failure is good. Our brain likes to fail. It encourages it to develop. Games where you win all the time are deadly boring. Anybody ever play the game Flappy Bird? You know Flappy Bird? It was the hardest game on the planet. It was impossible. And it sold millions and millions and millions of copies. People wanted to play it. People wanted to fail. So failure boosts cognition. The brain reboots between 3 to 7 minutes. So there's a window when cognition operates at its optimum between 3 and 7 minutes. And then like a cronky old PC, your brain reboots. You usually don't notice it. But you've got a window of cognition between 3 and 7 minutes. This is an interesting one. We're not designed, really, to pass the number line. We struggle with numbers. We intuitively understand ratios, and this is a survival mechanism. You know, if you're in the jungle and you meet an enemy or you meet a wild animal and it's 1 to 1, you know that you stand maybe a 50-50 chance if you're lucky. If it's 2 to 1, you know that's it, you're dead. So we intuitively understand ratios because it's a survival mechanism. Number lines we struggle with. There is a tribe in South America called the Mundugu tribe, and their counting system goes 1, 2, lots. And anthropologists, you know, chopper into the village and they say, right, how many kids have you got? Lots. Right? No, really, how many kids have you got? Lots! Well, can we count them? It's like, why do you want to count my kids? What are you up to? So yeah, ratios and patterns. Ratios and patterns, we intuitively understand them. Numbers we struggle with. Safe danger. Have you ever stood on the edge of a cliff or a high building and looked down and a little voice in your head has said, go on, jump? Have you ever had that? Edgar Allan Poe called it the imp of the perverse. It's a safety mechanism. What is happening is your brain is testing, it's basically alerting you to the limit of danger. So because the second you hear that voice, you go, no, I'm not going to jump. What are you on about? Why are you telling me to jump? That's why games are so interesting because they put us in a situation of safe danger. So if you're playing games like Grand Theft Auto or Call of Duty or that kind of thing, you're placed in fake stress environments that the brain thrives on. Spatial awareness. We're designed to operate in 3D space. And so games that rely on 3D and 3D awareness are much more interesting. So if you get all these things together, a short reward cycle, trial and error, spatial awareness, patterns and ratios, and safe danger, you have the optimum immersion for the brain. If you put all these things together, and the best games will put all these together. And you get your immersion, you get your interest, you get your excitement. The problem that we have with games in education is that most games, historically, weren't produced by the gaming industry or people who were really experts in the principles of games. They tended to be produced by educationalists who kind of came to games without really understanding the principles behind it. So you get the chocolate-covered broccoli approach. And kids aren't stupid. You know, when you see a kid goes to school, and there you are, there's your maths game. Great. Great, okay, play the maths game, go on, it's fun. Right, okay. And then the kid goes home, wow, Skyrim. This is what they play at home. You know? Here it's, you know, pop all the balloons that have prime numbers in them. Ally yourself with the Queen and defeat the evil sorcerers that have tainted the land with evil magic. Why, you know, it's not really a fair situation. Now, there are kind of 4 levels of gaming. There are kind of 4 points at which learning occurs. And I'm going to step through each of them. And again, I want to stress that this is not just about computer games. Board games, particularly board games and role-playing games, and you'll see this shortly, they are absolutely fundamental. Because with actual physical games, you can do so much more with game design and game playing than you can with PC games. PC games tend to suffer from the legacy of being one player, one game. It's moving away from that now. We have multiplayer games, we have massively multiplayer online role-playing games where people can collaborate and work together. But historically it tends to be one person, one game, one computer. Whereas with board games, immediately you have a social element. Okay, the game. Where does learning occur? So the first type of game, and this is unfortunately where most educational games sit, basically the task is the game. Okay? You play the game, you're actually not playing the game, you're actually doing the sum. You're doing the task. There's no kind of layering, there's no immersion, there's no absorption. It's just, here's a sum dressed up in pretty colours. Get the socks in the right order so that you can ride the magic boat to the trigonometry island. It's like, really? Yeah, it's great. It's a sum. No, it's a game. It's a sum. It's a game. You know, again, it's totally dead. There's no engagement. There's no sense of losing yourself in a kind of an immersive world. Okay, so that's kind of the weakest in terms of learning. It's just basically you're conning the kids. The next one is simulation. Okay. Now, if you want to learn about the development of culture, society, art, politics, economics, from the early Renaissance until the end of the Enlightenment, you can, if you so wish, read Fernand Brauddel's classic Civilization and Capitalism. It's about 2,000 pages. I mean, it's brilliant. By all means read it, or you can play Europa Universalis 4. Anybody play Europa Universalis 4 here? Okay. In Europa Universalis 4, the company Paradox basically took Brauddel's mammoth social history, turned it into a game. So you can be the ruler of any country in the world, and you can take it from 1430 all the way through to 1820. You control politics, economics, you control culture, arts, law, trade. You know, you can be the Doge of Venice. You know, and you can try things out. Now, you're not playing the game. You're not kind of playing the game as a task. What you're doing is you're playing the simulation. The game mechanism is hidden. What you're doing is playing the simulation. If I'm the Doge of Venice and I want to trade with the Hanseatic League, I want to promote my merchants, so I'll support the merchants, but the guild, the leaders of the guild, will get angry with me and my social stability will drop. You can experiment. It's a sandbox game. You can experiment with history and learn about 300 years of human development. That's game as simulation. The next stage is where the learning comes through the actual act of playing the game. So it's not doing the sum. It's not kind of losing yourself in the simulation. You're engaging in the playing as a social act. And this is where we move away largely from PC games, and we move into things like role-playing games. In role-playing games, any Dungeons and Dragons players here, by the way? Anybody used to play Dungeons and Dragons? Okay, glad to see there's some of us still around. With role-playing games, groups of people get together and they create stories. They negotiate, they collaborate, they create stories, they solve puzzles, they discuss rules. So it's an intensely social form of playing. It improves language skills, cooperative skills, because role-playing games, by and large, tend to be cooperative rather than competitive. You can explore things like ethical choices and storytelling. And again, it's not just PCs, this is really important. The best role-playing games are paper, pencil-based with dice, sitting down in a group, getting kids together to work through different scenarios and play the games. And the last, and I think possibly the most powerful way of incorporating games into learning is where you no longer just play the game, you actually design the game. You either design the parameters of the game from within the game, or you build the game yourself. And we're seeing this with these massively multiplayer online role-playing games now, where they're basically called sandbox games, where there's no end goal. There's no end goal. The game is what the players make of it. Did anybody ever used to play Elite? Way back, okay, in the old King's time, when one of the first computer games was Elite for the BBCB. This is the latest version. The company has modelled the entire galaxy, or as much of it that we know, on real scale, so the distances proportionally are exactly the same. And basically, you just fly around the galaxy, cooperating with other players. There's no rules, there's no end goal in sight, it's entirely what the players make of it. There's another game called EVE Online, which is very similar, which is used by Harvard University for doing economic modelling. And again, it's sandbox gaming, where the players themselves create the game. And to extrapolate from this, I think probably the most powerful way of getting kids involved in gaming and understand and use gaming for learning is to get the kids to design the game themselves. Not a computer game, because then you need to be an expert in coding, but board games and card games. Get the kids themselves to create games. Because they will have to do two things. First of all, they need to understand the subject and learn about the subject they're building a game about. And secondly, they have to also create a system that is playable as a game. This is another perfectly good example of a open world sandbox game. Anybody here play Minecraft? Okay. It's interesting seeing the distribution of who plays what. Minecraft again, it's an open world game, it's a sandbox game with no rules and no parameters. So, these are kind of the four modalities of the way that we play games and can use games in education. Sadly, at the moment, most education games are still stuck in the first area, where they take a task, or a problem, or a puzzle, and just dress it up and try and hide what it actually is. But as you move into simulation gaming, then role-playing, games based around groups of people speaking, talking to each other, negotiating ideas, and finally onto game design, that's where the learning potential, the immersion, and the metacognition, the awareness of how we learn and how we understand games and why we play games and why games are so exciting, increases. So, just to summarize, from a neuroscientific point of view, these are the characteristics that will provide maximum immersion. A short reward cycle between 3 and 7 minutes, which fits in with the period that the brain is at its optimum cognitive ability. Trial and error that encourages failure. That's why we love games. We love games because they challenge us. And because they set situations where we fail and fail and fail and fail and fail until we figure out how to win. Spatial awareness, games that involve spatial awareness, 3D in particular. That's why 3D games are so interesting, and that's why so many kids love to play them. Patterns and ratios. Tetris. Any Tetris players? Yeah, okay. Tetris, Candy Crush Saga. When I came in earlier, I noticed somebody over there, who shall remain nameless, on the iPad playing a game that was all about spaces and patterns and things. The brain loves it. Safe danger. Safe testing of the parameters of danger. The brain thrives on it. It thrives on the fake stress and the fake tension. If you wrap all those things up together, then you get the optimum immersive experience. And that's what you get in the best games. So if we're going to design games for education, we're going to get the kids to design games for education, these are the things that we need to incorporate in the gaming experience. Okay, I think within 36 seconds. Okay, thank you very much. If anybody wanted to talk about any of these ideas with me, please feel free, come over to the Promethean booth, and I'm happy to chat. Thank you very much indeed.